Good evening. The Wednesday, February 23rd, 2022 meeting of the Conservation Commission will now come to order. And the first order of business will be the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. The next item will be the approval of minutes if they can be approved.
I have reviewed the minutes, and I move that we accept the minutes as drafted.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. The minutes are accepted. We're going to go straight to notice of intent, 242-1787, 135 North Ramp Road. Do we need to kick this, or are we ready to go? If you want to wait for any witnesses, we can.
I think what we can do is talk about Stantec's report results,
Okay.
boring results.
Boring results, okay.
We're going to continue. We'll give the applicant time to review as well, and at the next meeting, if they want to weigh in, that's fine.
Okay.
But at least, it's been so long, I figured it might be good, just to at least get the boring results under our belt.
Are you going to put those in, or is Mr. Miller?
I can provide you with my rundown
Yeah.
in my, so,
Yeah.
and,
You don't have to, you don't have to go word
no,
for word,
okay,
just-
so Mike Sabulis, our third-party peer review, is on the call. Okay, so we have Mike Miller, airport manager, with us, and representative from Stantec with him. So the commission will recall that you required a series of borings in the glass pile for soils and groundwater readings. GEI reviewed those results and the Stantec report. The scope of the work was in accordance with our specifications. Soil sampling was sufficient to assess if oil or hazardous materials were present. And same with the groundwater, they were done correctly. The soil data indicated the presence, did not indicate the presence of any hazardous waste or oil. Monitoring well reports showed that all but one sample were clean. The one sample had elevated lead at a concentration of 13 UGL when the reportable limit was 10. But no other compounds were detected. Stantec, if you read the Stantec report, the source of lead was unknown. There's no other information to suggest that the source of lead in the groundwater is on the subject property. There's solid waste transfer station and landfill to the north of the subject property and other industrial operations surrounding the property. Okay, so the proposed groundwater sampling is being performed in general accordance with the MCP requirements according to GEI. And GEI agrees with Stantec's opinion that there does not appear to be a significant release of oil or hazardous materials from the glass or solid waste materials on site.
Let me go.
Go ahead.
Let me go
Yep.
into the commission. Joe.
I did read Mike's summary of the reports, which differ a little bit, I think, from what you just read, Amy.
Mm-hmm.
And I may be mistaken. If I am, I apologize.
No, that's all right.
I think they did find oil and hazardous material, but that what they did find was below reportable levels. So it, yeah, so it's not like they didn't find it. They did find it, but below.
Yes.
All right.
No, that's
And-
right.
Which makes me far more comfortable simply than we were a long time ago. The lead is in the groundwater, not in any recoverable soil sample, correct? And that's probably a
That's
question for Mike.
what I understand.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Commissioners and Madam Administrator, thank you. The first sampling found that quantity of lead that the Administrator talked about, and it was in the groundwater. As a result of that finding, they conducted a second round of sampling in January, and they found no lead. And they're proposing to do a third round as a quality control measure in April, and we're agreeing to do that. But yes, the first test found it in, I'm not sure the well number, but they found it in the water.
So I guess one of the things we were looking to deduce from this is whether it was appropriate or not to collect water into an infiltration system near the surface and percolate it through the horizon of glass. Would we be picking up anything that we didn't want to pick up, only to charge it into the groundwater? And so lead is not of that type, especially unless it's in the glass, and they didn't find anything up above it. It's only in the groundwater. So it may be, in situ to the soils itself and the groundwater itself.
That is my belief from reading the report.
And I'll defer to Mike on this, but lead is insoluble. It doesn't move rapidly through the groundwater, so it's probably something inherent to the soil. Mike, is that a reasonable assessment?
I just got a text from somebody that says they think we're muted, going out to the, going out electronically. Somebody says they think we're muted. Is that possible?
It's possible.
And if so, we have to fix it.
Yep.
So they're not hearing any, so it's a person monitoring this meeting at home?
Yeah,
So I'm going to keep talking and tell me if, let them report back if they're hearing us. I'm not going to keep testifying or
I don't know
asking.
if it's on television, if they're streaming it, can they stream
They're
it?
streaming it.
They're streaming it.
Is he watching? Is that a good question? Is he zooming? Is he,
Is it TV or stream?
that's Foster
Can we ask
Street.
the people out there if it, well, I guess,
Well, I'm instant messaging with Jamie and Taylor, who are on the call.
I think it's Mr. Walker on screen. Can you hear us, Alan?
No.
Alan, are you hearing me?
I'm gonna go with no.
Yeah,
Either that or he doesn't like you.
And it's, you could be right.
Yeah, I don't know.
No. He reports nothing's going on.
There we go. Yeah, he just.
Alan, Mr. Walker, can you hear us now? Are you muted,
you
Alan?
might be muted now.
tag on you.
I was looking at those
Yes, I can hear.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. You hear us fine now?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
they-
And you're a person, so I think
got a-
we're live
got a
again?
positive
I think we
report
can,
in.
all right.
Thank you. You happen to be on screen, so we use you as our sound check. Thank you.
Okay.
So the question,
All right, we're good, so.
the
go
point I
ahead.
was trying to make was that through this whole process, we were trying to determine whether it made sense to collect water on the surface and infiltrate it through an unknown horizon of material, only to get into the groundwater. So what we were looking to do was determine what is in that upper media
Right.
before it gets to the groundwater. And what I'm hearing is, so far, nothing has been found.
And that's my understanding as well.
Okay.
And you were gonna pose that to Mike Sabulis?
To Mike Sabulis.
And Mike, this follow-up question to Michael was, the presence of lead in the water sample, the groundwater sample, am I to believe, as I think I am, that lead is insoluble and is not as prone to migration through the site? It's likely in situ to the soils around where the sample itself was taken.
It's a good question. I'm not sure that I can speculate on that. Given that it was detected, and I'd have to go back and look, I believe in a dissolved concentration, that means it is in a leachable state. However, the concentrations that are detected at are not considered reportable under the Massachusetts contingency plan. So not at a level that would be considered of risk.
Okay. In your review of the data that was collected through the borings themselves, there's nothing for us to believe that there's anything of concern in the glass fill horizons above groundwater, that if we were to introduce surface water as an infiltrating media, infiltrating substance through that media, that we'd be further contaminating groundwater. Is that a reasonable statement?
I think so. If I had to guess, just given the loose, high porosity nature of that sort of material, water is flowing through that probably on a fairly regular basis, and it's a good draining layer, if you will. So if things were getting towards that interface, which Stantec did encounter and sampled across, you would see contamination building up because of the types of material that are underlying it and being a less permeable membrane. Sorry, membrane is not the correct term. Less permeable soil underneath the more permeable soils.
So.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense, thank you. And my last question is there anything we've learned so far that would tell us that additional or prolonged sampling or analyses of groundwater is necessary for us to reach a conclusion of whether surface water infiltration makes sense or not?
I think the path that Stantec has proposed to continue sampling for, I think it's 2 to 3 more events, and the representative can correct me if I'm incorrect, there to confirm that the lead levels were a one-off or singular event. Looking through the seasonal fluctuations is an important thing to see what's going on there. So my recommendation is to stick with that path and see how that plays out.
Excellent. I'm all set, thank you.
Right. I was going to say the data collected to date indicates that there does not seem to be a contribution from the soil and the fill material, rather, to underlying subsurface.
Thank you very much. I'm all set. Al?
Mr. Chairman, through you, just to clarify, Stantec, to my belief, is suggesting to do testing in April, one more round, but if you suggest another, I'll talk to them and we'll renegotiate the contract.
Do you have thoughts on
Was
that,
that
Rick?
was that a question for Mike?
It was for Mike.
I think Mike's
Oh.
let me paraphrase. Mike's clarifying that his arrangement now is to do one more round of sampling, and Mike, you might have suggested more than one?
Oh, hold on, let me check my notes real quick. The proposition to collect an additional round of sampling, and I apologize for Mayor if I was saying 2 to 3. If it is only one, that would be sufficient. Looking what the Stantec team is looking to do is to try to trace that seasonal variability across different groundwater conditions. So I did read their reports, and what they propose, in my opinion, is sufficient for characterizing the groundwater conditions on site.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to start with a comment, I think, this sampling that we did, I think was very thorough. It seems to be done by the specifications of the Conservation Commission. It put a lot of worst-case scenario ideas to rest, I think, in my opinion, where we had trace elements of hydrocarbons in the fill material. The groundwater seemed to be reasonably clean except for that one sample, the lead. Lead could, I don't know that lead could come from adjacent properties, the landfill next door. So I'm pleased with the results that we don't have a constantly polluting subsurface slug of poison down there that's continuing to pollute our groundwater. I think that's not the case, and I think the sampling has given me personally a good a good thought, a good feeling about the site right now, and I did look over those 161 pages of the document that we have. Obviously, I just skimmed them, but I'm glad we're going to continue, because I do want to go a little deeper into some of those hydrocarbons that were analyzed, but all seem to be below acceptable limits. So that's a good thing. It means that maybe they dissipated over the long period, the decades that the fill has been there, and they've dispersed through the groundwater, and we seem to be pretty much within acceptable limits. So I'm feeling pretty good about the results, but I do want to have one last look at that, because that was a lot of data and a lot of small numbers to read. But good. Oh, that's it for me, Al.
Okay, thank you. So there is one more round of testing to be done, right?
There is.
And
It'll be in April. and
So
we'll provide-
at the end of this, will we have done 2 rounds of testing or 3?
3.
3, and if we come up negative on a 3rd round, then it's not reportable at that point. If we get anything on that one, it is reportable. Is that right? To DEP?
Depends on the levels. If we get
Mike, what would trigger reporting to DEP on the 3rd round of testing?
Doesn't matter if it's a third round or first round.
Or I guess it doesn't matter.
Apparently it does.
It's,
It's a reportable limit.
Mike's not
But-
here. Oh, he is.
can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
So, in my opinion, so this current second round, lead was not detected all above reporting limits for the method detection. If that scenario plays out and it's below reporting limits again, I think the LSP for Stantec has solid reasoning to not have a reportable condition, and that it could have been a singular scenario. If lead is detected again above reporting limits, it's furthers the conversation, and then I would defer to their LSP on whether or not there is a reporting condition.
All right, thank you. Sean?
One of the objectives was to identify the nature and constituents of the fill. Were you able to do that? We know, I mean, other than the glass.
Honestly, I'm not the expert subject matter on this.
Okay.
I'll defer to Mike. I know he was present, or representatives from his company were present.
Hey, Mike, does Stantec know that? I know they figured out, have conclusions concerning the other goal, which is the presence of oil and hazardous materials. But did they identify the nature and constituents of the fill?
Yeah, so we were provided with boring logs in their most recent submittal, and what the borings were classified from ground surface all the way down to natural material. What they found was a fairly uniform mix of ground up glass and soil, so sandy soils. Does that answer your question, or do we
Yeah,
need to go a little bit deeper?
it does. We just, that was one of the goals, was to find out what's in there. Obviously, we wanted to
That's
know if
right.
there were any contaminants in there, but, that pile's been growing and growing for decades, and we have no idea what was put there 25 years ago, or 10 years ago, or yesterday.
Correct. So if I could expand that a little bit, in finding things that were different or unexpected from what was proposed, that being like a glass, recycled glass fill combined with soils, there was nothing different than that observed in the soil borings.
Gotcha.
So to help out from the other side of that person. Or some oil or different materials, chunks of metal, other things that might have been red flags. The material in the fill looked fairly uniform.
Right. So no indications that at any point in time it was used as a dump and then stuff was just piled up on top of it based upon any of the boring samples?
That appears correct, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Do you have any other questions, Amy? So, it sounds like this is gonna continue to play out,
Yep.
and, I don't think we have any, are there any further requests or recommendations, or do you want to just let it run the way it's programmed?
I probably would offer a motion to continue to the first meeting in May.
Okay.
To allow for the April testing.
Motion. Are there any abutters here for this project? No abutters answer. Are there any abutters on the line that want to be heard, assuming? Not indicated at this time. I have a motion and a second to continue. Is there any further discussion? I hear none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. Just continue to the first meeting in May.
First meeting.
Thank you,
Great.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you all.
Commissioners.
Thank you. Thanks.
Good luck with the snow.
Thank you.
242-1835, 328 Campbell Road.
All righty. Let me pull up the plan.
Is anybody here for this filing?
I don't believe the applicant could make it this evening.
No, that's fine. I just want to see if there was
Okay.
anybody, if
Yeah.
any abutters or
I don't
anybody
know
want-
if there's any abutters for 328 Campbell. All right. All righty. This NOI is for upgrading an existing cesspool to a Title V compliant septic system. The proposal is to replace the cesspool with a new subsurface system consisting of a 20 by 32 leach field, new septic tank, and D-box. The work is within the 100-foot buffer zone to BVW and bank of a pond that are located to the rear of the property. All work is out of the 50-foot no-build zone, and it is in front of the house in lawn area, requiring no tree removal or woody vegetation removal. I reviewed the wetland flagging, found it to be accurate. The property is partially located in natural heritage habitat, but all of the work is outside of that zone. And the Board of Health has approved the system, and the approval letter has been included in the package. This is a fairly straightforward project. Access is straight off the existing driveway at the front of the house. Erosion controls are proposed in appropriate places, and, you know, like I said, where it is, it's lawn, so it's, I
Mr.
don't
Lynch.
see a lot.
Didn't read the construction sequence in any great detail, but the quick read, it's just going to be subject to our standard condition as using some sort of a tight tank during construction,
Yeah.
that the existing septic tank probably be used as a holding tank until the final step. Otherwise, I'm fine.
No waivers requested for this?
Nope, none needed.
And Board of Health approval is
Yep.
intact?
Yep.
Okay, no more questions.
All set, John? No questions. Vote.
So recommend close the hearing and issue in 21 days. I do have a draft decision for you tonight.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second, discussion. None, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. Closed. 2421836, 64 Nutmeg Lane.
Pull up the plan.
Anyone here for this one?
Yeah, we got Greg Hockmith in the,
Greg Hockmith on the Zoom.
I'm here.
All right, good, you're glad you can hear us.
wait a minute. I'm gonna have to go. Yeah, oh, NOI.
So this
here we
is,
go. Okay, hold on, I'm just finding the plan here. Alrighty, so this notice of intent is a response to a cease and desist letter issued by conservation staff for unauthorized clearing of woody vegetation within the buffer zone. The commission required that the wetland be delineated, and then that would then help determine what type of application. So initially, we thought it was going to be a simple yard expansion project. But I think Greg sat down with the applicants and really dug into sort of their master plan for the property. They have some other activities planned, grading and loaming the cut areas to create expanded lawn, perimeter fencing just outside the 25 with wetland markers on the 25, no disturb, rear paver patio with a fire pit, spa, and outdoor kitchen. The patio is just outside the 50. Deck expansion and small addition at the rear of the house, also outside the 50. There's a larger addition off the western side of the house that will be 50 feet 5 inches from the wetland. And there'll be front paver walkways, and those will be out of the 50. We walked the wetland line yesterday, I believe, found it to be accurate and pretty much right where we thought it would be. I didn't make any flag changes. I asked Greg to try to look at the as-built plan for this lot from the subdivision to see how much farther the unauthorized clearing by this new owner was done compared to the limit of work that was approved under subdivision for this lot. So I don't know if he's been able to ascertain that information. The plan that was originally submitted did not show the stone wall that was right up against the wetland edge, so we have that notation now. And I guess that's it in a nutshell.
Okay. Greg, I'm going to go right to the commission, okay?
Sure.
Joe?
Yeah, when the application first appeared before us during the enforcement order discussions, I think we pleaded upon them to, consider all the things you might want to do and bring them all in now. So, thank you for considering those things. What's not clear to me in reading the proposed activities, and I don't remember because it was some time back now, was there any restoration necessary? Was there any actual violation of the of resource area besides buffer zone?
Not resource area.
But-
They have been some in the 25.
So we were expecting some restoration of the 25. And are they proposing that in this?
Not that I see, and, it wasn't, we thought maybe some of it was in the 25, but we weren't sure until the wetland delineation was performed. And so I think there is, based on my walk yesterday, there is not a lot, but there is some.
So I think that
I
needs to
can
be part of
speak
this
to that.
NOI.
Yeah, Greg, go ahead.
Yeah, I think Amy summed it up very, very nicely. The good news is, with the exception of about a foot or two along the edge of woods, all of the clearing took place outside the 25. The stumps are still in place, the seed bank's still in place, no loam was brought in, nothing was scarified. So I fully expect that 1 to 2 foot area to grow back on its own. I don't think it makes sense to put any plants in. The markers that are in place now have to be moved slightly, just so they are on the 25. Right now, they're about 24, 23, close, but after we flagged it, the line moved up a little bit. The area that you see to the right of the no disturb, they're really only going to be able to expand the lawn, a few feet, and that few feet is going to be a 2-to-1 slope. So they're not going to gain a ton of area, but they will be able to put a fence along the 25 for the dog. I fully expect the 25 to come back on its own. I mentioned we're moving the markers. We did calculate the square footage that was cleared beyond the prior approved limit of work, and it came out to 1,750 square feet. And on average, it was about an 8 to 10 foot encroachment beyond the prior hay bale line. But all of the activities you see on the current plan do meet all the setbacks. We have construction access proposed on it's the left side of the house, but the right side of the plan that you're seeing. We've added a couple temporary stockpile area locations in case the need arises for stockpiling. Erosion controls will be installed prior to construction, remain in place during construction, and until permission is given for them to be removed. We're not in natural heritage, it's not an ACEC, and DEP did issue a file number with no comments.
So in summary, we're talking about on order of 1,700 square feet of disturbance of the no disturb zone, but your thought is that it will come back and restore on its own without any further activity?
No, so the 1,750 square feet is it's outside of the no disturb zone. So the original notice of intent for the lot development showed a hay bale line, and Amy asked us to calculate the square footage beyond that hay bale line that was cleared. So in other words, the recent activity beyond the prior approved limit of clearing, and that amounted to 1,750 square feet. But almost all of it was outside the 25-foot no disturb zone.
Thank you for clarifying, because I didn't hear that the first time around. I apologize. So that does make a difference. So letting it revert back on its own and providing a physical barrier of a fence. And is the fence type specified here?
Yeah, well, it's going to hold back a dog, but right now they're considering it's like one of those faux aluminum wrought iron type fences.
Yeah.
But they may decide to put a stockade in. They're not too sure yet. They're actively talking to fence companies
So what we're looking for is physical barrier. So those two that you just described are both that.
Yes, yeah, and to take it a step further, the posts will be in, they're very visible. You'll be able to see those, the height that they are even after the fence goes in. And, we kicked and screamed a little bit when Amy asked us to add that stone wall, but it helps to show it because there is another barrier prior to the wetland. It's not on the 25, but it is an existing boulder wall somewhat on the wetland edge.
So, assuming that we vote affirmatively and issue an order of conditions, it's good for 3 years with 2 one-year extensions, so 5 years. If they don't start the proposed addition within that window of time, or if they've completed everything else and got a certificate of compliance and removed erosion controls, and they hadn't started the addition, I think that the addition becomes a discussion for future action under amendment or some action for them to be able to move forward. I guess we did ask for them to consider all things that they might do. What I didn't ask her was, what's that timetable? Do you think it's all going to get done within 5 years?
Well, I think it might be appropriate to require if this is phased, and I suspect that it will be, it might be appropriate to require a second or even a third pre-construction meeting, because the reality is we would need to install new erosion controls.
Got it. I'm all set, thank you.
Yeah, you guys clarified a lot of my questions. Clearly, this, it seems like the fence is just outside the 25-foot no disturb zone. It seems like the patio construction and even a corner of that addition is right at the 50-foot no build. So we've got some close setbacks there. We'll, as part of the order of conditions, if we get one, it's the pre-construction inspection is going to be very important on this project. I guess my only, functional question on this one is the markers. Now, where there's been a previous violation on this lot, we're kind of a little bit more sensitive about communicating the boundaries of our setbacks, and specifically the 25-foot no disturb zone. So if there's going to be a solid fence, which we're very much in favor of, is that going to conceal the wetland? Is that going to conceal the 25-foot no disturb zone markers? We need to have them visible, is my point. So one way or another, that's got to happen under this order of conditions.
Yeah, so the current fence that they're considering, you can see right through and you'd be able to see the markers. And if they did decide to do a stockade, it would be easy enough to put the markers actually on the fence posts.
That might be the best solution. I think we might just condition that the markers are clearly visible from the buffer zone outside the 25-foot no disturb, and leave you guys to decide how that happens.
Say that again? I'm sorry.
That we would condition that the setback markers are visible
Yep.
after
Yep,
construction.
gotcha, yep.
That's all I have.
No questions.
Sean has no questions. Amy, do you have any questions or concerns?
Actually, I thought Joe was starting to drive at it that, the patio and the larger addition is at the 50. So they have no wiggle room there. Wetland line changes, wetlands change. So we have a line right now for potentially 5 years. I think it's important for the applicants to understand, they must meet what they're doing right now. And they might want to think doing those things sooner than later, because that's where the line is right now. Yes. And that's where the 50 is right now. So I hope they understand that, they have no wiggle room, and if they go over the 50, they're going to have to move it. In the life of this particular order. But if they decide to scrap it under this particular order, and then come back again, and the wetland changes a little bit, then, you know, it may not be in their favor. And they may,
That was exactly my line of
Okay.
questioning.
All right.
I intend to put a condition in that speaks to the life expectancy of this order, and that truly, that line is locked in for 5 years.
Right.
Even if it does move, but anything beyond that, it's
Right.
gonna, it's a new discussion.
Right.
Just because we previously approved
Right.
something that close and the lines changed, doesn't mean it's
Doesn't
still
mean
approvable
it's- okay,
in the
yeah.
future.
okay, yep.
Yeah, but that'll be in our order, I hope.
So just wanted to make that clear to the applicant, that's all.
Understood, thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Any abutters, neighbors want to be heard? None answer. I'm ready for a motion.
I move that we close 242 1836 64 Nutmeg Lane.
Second.
Motion second, discussion? None, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And it's closed, thank you.
I'll
Thank
have
you,
a
everyone.
draft
Have a good
decision
night.
For the
Thank you,
next
sir.
meeting. I'll have a draft decision ready for the next meeting.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
242-1837, 1260 Salem Street.
1266, oh, request to continue,
Oh, that's a request to continue. isn't it?
yes.
moved?
Yep,
Second.
Motion is second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous to be continued. Under amendments, 242-1779, Stevens Street, trustees of reservations.
I'm gonna pull this up, we're not. Alrighty, so the commission will recall issuing an order of conditions in February of 2020, governs heavy mowing, prescribed fire, invasive species management, and canopy thinning to restore Barrens habitat and savanna habitat at the Wire Hill trustees' property. The trustees have received additional grant money, and that would allow them to increase the amount of habitat management from the 47 acres to 60 acres. There is a total of 80 acres on the site that have fire-influenced habitat, actively managed, but the 47 acres was under this order of conditions for, you know, the mowing and the canopy thinning. So, under this amendment, they're looking for allowing additional 13 acres of canopy thinning, as well as routine habitat management activities to maintain all 80 acres of the Barrens habitat. They've developed a long-term O&M plan, which we didn't have with the previous, with the original notice of intent. They've developed that, looking for approval for that perhaps that could be part of ongoing condition under a certificate of compliance, you know, a very predictable set of activities that happen at periodic times, with perhaps a revisit, an update every so often with the commission. They are actually, prior to this, they received waivers from the planning board under the watershed special permit, but they've decided to go forward with the actual special permit application so that they can memorialize a long-term O&M with the planning board as well. Some of the prescribed fire and invasive species management would occur in the 25 and possibly the wetland. There is a vernal pool identified, not certified, but the work for the management for the species type and the habitat type is outside the 50-foot no disturb. And they would want to keep an eye on invasives creeping into that wetland or the vernal pool. So I think they'd look for being allowed to manage for invasives that would creep into the wetland and the vernal pool. They're not in there right now. Right?
Yeah, they're not in the vernal pool, but other wetland resource areas and the 25-foot they are inside. So we'd be looking to manage those invasive species to protect the health of the resource area, and then in additional to prevent spread into the restoration zone. Because for the most part, the restoration area we've been working on is pretty clear of invasives. It's spotty throughout it, but we kind of don't want this seed source adjacent to where we're going to be restoring, that seed would then spread into the restoration area.
And this is Jeff Denoncourt. He's an ecologist for the trustees, and he's managing this whole project.
Okay,
So.
let me go right to the.
Go ahead. Yep.
We had a chance to review your PowerPoint presentation, and for the purpose of saving time, we're not going to display it here, but I ask if we find in the affirmative in favor of this request, that we provide a link to the TTOR, and that on your site, you have this plan out there for people to read. It's a heavily utilized facility, as you know. You should be proud of that. And this, to me, is a really ambitious, ongoing, and successful project that everybody should take credit for, if we go that way.
Yep.
So, things that we don't normally talk about, but you've offered it in discussion, is, work in the resource area itself, in the wetlands themselves, and it's invasives management. It's no excavation, it's no regrading. I want to be clear on that. But everything else is a continuation of what it is you have been doing, and over a bigger area, and now actual invasive plant management within the wetland areas themselves, correct?
Exactly, and so this year we looked at the whole 80 acres of fire-influenced landscape, the 47 acres that we've been doing the majority of the restoration activities, so the canopy thinning, mowing, et cetera. And so we looked at the last remaining acres within that 80-acre fire-influenced footprint, where conducting these management activities would be beneficial, and we would be able to create the habitat that we're looking for, which is that Barrens habitat. So we identified 13 acres within that 80-acre footprint that we could effectively manage and maintain in the future. So where we can't is where the remaining acres, so kind of the last 20 acres of that 80 acres, the slopes are just too steep for us to bring equipment through and effectively mow. So it'd be very difficult for us in the future to maintain those acres. So we basically pick this kind of last segment to fully restore, and then that last remaining 20 acres would be, we'd keep in our prescribed fire plan. So
let's talk specifics of invasive plant management in wetland areas. What is it you're proposing to do?
So currently, there is Phragmites within the intermittent stream bed. There is honeysuckle, Phragmites, buckthorn, winged euonymus in the buffer zone of Lake Cochituic, the shrub swamp, and then in and around, so it's not in that vernal pool itself, but there's kind of a contiguous wetland, and in and around that area that there are those invasive species present. And so we would be looking to implement a cut stem application within the resource area. So we would cut the stem and then apply a very small amount of herbicide to the cut stem to treat the invasive plant.
Just hand paint the cut stems.
Exactly, and so we wouldn't be doing a foliar application with a backpack sprayer or anything like that in the actual wetland.
And you thought that would need to be redone every year?
It depends. So that fortunately, the level of invasive species that are present at the site make control achievable. So it's a low number where we could control it, and that's if we were going to undertake those. If it was loaded with invasives, then it would be a big dramatic project to try to control them. We might not be able to have the resources or ability to implement effective control, but the level of infestation there presently gives us the ability. And I say, okay, that's something that we could effectively control.
And the slash that comes out, what do you propose to do with it?
We would bring that out of the wetland resource area.
And dispose of it properly elsewhere?
Yes, exactly, yeah.
I'm all set.
Yeah, as Amy stated earlier, this is a continuation of an existing authorization for, for this reservation that the trustees have. And we have a long and successful history with the trustees. My expectation is that these changes will just be a continuation of the success we've had. You guys seem to know what you're doing. And we rely on that, especially on this very sensitive parcel that we have here, right above our drinking water supply. So,
Totally.
Anyway, I guess my only comment beyond that is that, could you certify that vernal pool? Could you get that certified as part of this authorization?
I think we would be able to do that.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, it just
yeah,
makes
yeah.
sense, and
Yep.
you would probably be the one doing it
Yeah, I probably
anyway.
would be the one to do it.
You better get your boots ready.
Yeah, right, I know,
Yeah,
I know,
I know,
it's,
right?
yeah,
It's coming up.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
coming up soon.
Now you're gonna start hearing it.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Okay.
I'm going to Sean.
Is there just, how do you schedule, or how do you announce the schedule of the prescribed fires? And can you tell me what safety mechanisms are, or just remind me of those, or the folks at home?
Yeah, so
Briefly.
there's a, so it has to be done according to the burn plan, which has extremely specific parameters for us to be able to implement the actual burn. So everything kind of has to align for us to be able to implement that prescribed fire, and it's becoming increasingly more difficult for us to actually implement those fires. And so on site, we also have to get a DEP air quality permit. As part of that, those burn plans are approved through regulatory agencies, so we have to notify the local fire department. We have to have an approved burn boss on site. No one in the trustees are an approved burn boss. I mean, I'm a prescribed firefighter. Other staff is as well, but we ourselves can't implement the burn, so we have to contract with outside agencies to do that. And then we partner with the DCR Forest Fire Service, so kind of local fire department, DCR fire. Our staff is on site. We notify, I think, the conservation. I think we've been historically notifying CONSCOM, and then the local fire department. So it's a lot of moving pieces that actually put fire on the ground, and our window in our ability to implement it is very rare. I mean, I think it's been 4 times since 2008 where we've actually been able to implement it, because there's so many different safety standards that go in to actually put it on the ground.
Like a rocket launch, right? You have to have all the...
Yeah, and it's challenging, because, I mean, so the benefit to prescribed fire, so we have 2 management methods to keep the habitat in an early successional state, so to prevent it from becoming mature forest again. And so one is heavy mowing, which we do, and then prescribed fire. The benefit to prescribed fire is that it reduces the lower fuel load. So both management activities reduce your shrub layer and bring that all down, but what mowing doesn't do is it doesn't burn off that initial duff layer. So this site and the species that rely on it are dependent upon nutrient-poor soil. So the more that duff layer builds up, the more nutrients you're adding to the soil that favor species that we're not necessarily trying to manage for at this site. So we really need that prescribed fire to kind of move through and create those soil conditions. So, but again, it's like, it's so difficult to implement that we're increasingly relying on mowing
to do that.
to do the work.
Thanks.
Any members of the public or abutters that want to be heard? Have any questions? Anybody on Zoom that wants to be heard or have any questions for trustees? I don't hear anything right now.
Let me try to wrap my arms around this. What we have is a permit that's still valid, right? The plan's still valid. They're looking to expand the area and to expand activities within that expanded area, correct?
Yeah,
It's technically an amendment to the order.
So we're only amending it, but not extending the timetable yet. We're gonna let that expire and then come back and expand it later.
Understood. That's not in front of us. Okay, yep, I got
Order.
it.
Yeah,
You guys
yeah,
just-
we
You don't
can't.
want it- you don't wanna-
We can't extend it, I think,
It's
with
a
an
5-year
amendment.
order.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, no,
yep.
I
So
get that.
we're not extending.
Yeah,
So
just-
that is my motion, is
Strictly
to,
amending but not extending.
yeah, to
Yep.
permit the, okay, close
I have
enough.
a
Not
motion and a
rescind.
second. Any further discussion? I
So
hear,
the motion to close the hearing,
Oh, is this amendment? We have to.
yes.
Okay, so we have to close and
the
then issue?
hearing, and then issue in
Approve the
21
amendment.
days.
we close, we approve
Right,
with language as added by
Right.
Mr. Lynch.
right. And they are before the planning board on March 1st.
Yeah.
I'm not
I think
sure.
in March 15th.
Or 15th, or what,
Yep.
I'm sorry, March 15th, something like that. So before our next meeting. No, it's not.
So, no, I
No.
don't think, so, yeah, and then, so there's
Though you
gonna,
don't
I
need-
thought you wanted.
Though you don't think you need,
a watershed permit, you're applying for one anyway.
We.
So we can't close or continue. We have to continue until after that's issued, right? In case the planning
That's what
board comes
you
up with
usually-
something.
So when we first submitted the notice of intent, we requested a waiver of the water. So we need a watershed permit to be able to conduct the work. And so we, last time we requested a waiver because historically for this work, we've always requested waivers or just gone in front and we've kind of gotten the green light. But this time this is,
So you want us to close?
if we could close, so one of the things with the grant that we're getting to fund this additional habitat expansion is that it aligns with the state's fiscal year. And it was a very tight timeline. We got issued the grant in January. And then we had to go through the multiple permitting steps to do this extra expansion. But we have to complete all the work by June
June
30th.
This June 30th or next June 30th?
This June 30th.
Love
So-
those grants.
So it's,
Yeah, really.
if we could move things forward, but we're not expecting, based on the contractor's timeline, who's gonna be doing the work, that we're gonna begin earlier than April 1st. So and we're not,
So let me offer this, timing, go
Before you
ahead.
do, let me just ask a quick question before you move it. In the original order, I assume there was a waiver request that was granted? Because,
it expires February 22nd.
but it was granted previously.
It was
was.
granted previously.
Yes,
and-
it was,
point.
yes.
okay.
Yeah, and there was,
Yes.
there was discussion at that meeting on, why we weren't just going for a full permit, and I think it was just because this is kind of what we had done, and I said, yeah, I'll go for the full permit, certainly, and we had kind of had our ducks in a row to get it, but this time, we're coming, this is kind of gonna be the final push for
I
us,
wouldn't
so.
normally consider this, but given the history that the planning board had no particular issue, and the time being of the essence, I have no problem that one of our conditions be, and in accordance with any special conditions put forth by the planning board. Put it in our decision.
Sure, but I mean, this was in front of us for an NOI, and we're amending that NOI, correct? And in that initial NOI process, I assume, because they're doing work within the 25, that
Yeah.
we granted a waiver request that was put in front of us?
Right.
Okay.
Right, yeah.
I just want to make sure, because if
And-
not, if this is new work that wasn't proposed in the 25, they'd be seeking a waiver request, which I think they would easily get because we understand why they're doing it for the
Right.
benefit of
I think the only change,
How much time is left on the order?
2 years?
Probably like, yeah,
You've done three, and two more to go?
Two or three,
So you've got
probably.
2 years left on the order. Okay.
Yep.
All right, so you're not in danger.
Yeah.
maybe even a little more with the COVID emergency, may have tacked on some more time on it.
Let me ask one more question. It might be a little bit, have you ever applied for or drafted or submitted a vegetation management plan for the Hill, a VMP?
I don't know if I've ever heard of,
I think,
is it a,
I think your O and M plan kind of
Well,
serves that,
But
serves as that, what they've submitted
we
as
want to
a,
consider the O and M a VMP?
This is almost
Because,
opposite. Vegetation management's for other reasons, but what they're really doing is managing wildlife habitat. And by managing their wildlife habitat results in
well,
managing the
they're
vegetation.
managing invasives, they're managing everything. And this is like a VMP on steroids. I wonder if that might not be a complementary document to file at some point to,
Because that can be an ongoing permit.
yes, that's my point. See, like, for example, places like the Lawrence Municipal Airport have a vegetation management plan that they come in front of us on occasion to submit and renew. And they manage the entire place, and they have a proposal on everything that's done,
That's-
from cutting and thinning to planting to conversion, you name it. And I'm just wondering out loud if that might not be something that your agency would benefit from, and it would complement your request to burn and slash and burn.
well, that's what I kind of said that at the beginning, that the O and M plan would serve as a mechanism under a certificate of compliance with an ongoing condition that says you'll adhere to the O and M that they prepared,
Yeah.
and that perhaps we could say,
I think-
report to us every, whatever,
I
5
think
years,
a VMP
or
would be,
whatever.
would be even more specific than the O and M. I think I'd like to see, something I think I'd like to see, and I think it's something that it would
Benefit
benefit.
from. They benefit from it.
You would benefit more than we would from generating and filing a VMP with us. because you'd have that ongoing permit now for 5 years to continue to do the work. It would just be something that, I think it might save you time once you file it.
Well, Amy's gives it to him in perpetuity.
Well, no, I think.
No, they're 5 years, they're 5 years.
Oh, 5 years?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
They have to come
For
back.
a specified period of time.
No,
that
no
they
in
could carry
perpetuities
out.
here, this is, this is not Dewey,
mean-
Cheatham, and Howe. We want them to come back and,
But I
Keep
don't.
us honest.
But I'm not sure I understand, and I don't mean to beat this at all, but the VMPs, you know, they're developed through usually a MEPA process, and it's a separate, so I guess I'm a little confused. I don't know, what is the mechanism that we allow this VMP to live under an ongoing condition, or
well,
a
look what-
condition that has a
look what's-
certain lifetime in the certificate of compliance? Do you know what I'm saying?
conditions.
Right.
They've got 3, 1 and 1, so they got 5-year life, and that's it. Beyond that, they'd have to refile for any continuation or any future activity. If you used another mechanism like a VMP, it can live in perpetuity. However, they need to come in periodically, report, get a favorable result of that report, and we could extend them to continue to implement the VMP so long as they remain in compliance.
Okay.
It doesn't
Okay.
ever expire until we make it expire.
that's, I guess, what I was
Okay.
trying to say. I did a bad job, but that's what I was
No, you
saying.
did a good job, I understood it.
Can anyone get one, or just, I mean, in the case of the airport, it's a municipality, is it?
Well, large parcels,
Yep.
large landowner parcels.
Utilities. Power line companies, gas line companies, yeah.
VMPs, yeah, I mean, it's,
Is this large parcel under a conservation restriction?
No, it's
It's
just,
not?
no.
Okay.
it's owned outright by TTO.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, when you have a conservation restriction, you have a baseline management plan, which then gets updated periodically, and I think that's what you're talking about. They just call it different.
Well, it might be similar to what I'm talking about, but I'm just talking about a VMP document.
So let's
You
not
can-
complicate it in 2022, they've got
Yeah.
some life left in the permit, but I think it's something they should take back and
I think
consider.
if you give them a copy of a couple of the VMPs we have, like, give them the
Okay.
airport's VMP.
Okay.
And you can see how that's proposed and how it's operated. That's one of the more successful ones that we've had.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly something we would consider.
Because that
moving
involved
forward.
a total
Right.
conversion, that involved a tremendous amount of cutting, taking down big trees, converting the lower layer to shrub so it won't grow back up to block visual pathways. That was a big deal. And, yeah, so something that I think it might help.
So an ongoing condition of a certificate of compliance could refer to the VMP,
It-
right?
Possibly, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, okay, so,
Okay, yeah, I can.
I'm not trying to muddy the waters, I just
No,
I think it'll benefit you.
Well, I mean, and I think, like, I mean, if we can avoid, I mean, we're fine with filing a new notice of intent every single time, but, you know, this is essentially our final push here, but if we don't continue the management that we're doing, we're gonna lose the habitat value and all the work that we've been doing over the years. So to have some sort of continuation that's formalized in writing that puts conditions on it, I think it makes total sense.
Okay, good. I'll take that as a yes. All right, what do you want right now? You want to close an issue?
yeah, are you
Or-
guys
or
comfortable
do we wanna-
closing an
Or do we need to
issue?
continue, or
We can,
think we need to continue.
no.
I think we have all the information we need.
close
Close
an
the
issue? Close an
issue.
issue as,
That's my motion.
21 days.
with additional language.
Right, I'll draft up an amended set of conditions, and you guys can review it next meeting.
So, do you move to close an issue?
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? I hear none. All those in favor? Opposed? And it appears to be unanimous.
Okay, great.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks,
All right.
Jeff, for
Just
coming.
a reminder, if you guys can get that PowerPoint on your website and let Amy know, maybe we can put a news item out if people are interested to read that, because the PowerPoint was really good summary of what you're doing out there.
Yeah, definitely, yeah, and I mean, I'd probably have to bring in our marketing
Right.
and run it up the ladder, but
Sure.
I'll certainly put the word out.
Thanks.
Yep.
All right, 19 Ferncroft Circle, continued from 2/9/22. This is a request for determination of applicability.
Yes, it is. So this is for connecting a machine wash pipe
Yep.
to the existing sewer
Now,
line
remember, this was my question. This
on
was
the
the one I asked, so let me,
outside.
yeah, we're not gonna waste your time. I'm gonna
Okay.
just cut right to the question and you can answer it, all right? I was the one that raised this question. I didn't understand why there couldn't be a hookup in the house to the sanitary sewer, why it had to run outside to a D-box and then make its own way. So if you can answer,
Yeah.
I'd love to hear it.
So Mike Riley, FP Riley and Sons.
Yep,
What
thank you.
it was is, inside the house, it's a walkout basement, and it's completely finished.
Okay.
The whole basement, and the washer machine is to the far left of the house. There's an 1.5-inch copper line that goes down under the floor, goes out to approximately 23 feet, to which I believe is a leach pit, whatever they use.
An old dry well possibly?
Just for the washer.
Okay.
And what it was is that the sewer was put in, I don't know how long ago.
Yeah.
Was run around, and either they thought it was for a sump pump or something, because it wasn't tied in, and it's never been tied in. What made it,
So when they brought the sewer in, they just, was there a septic system there before?
there had to have been, yeah.
So normally the tie-in takes the pipe that goes to the septic tank.
Yep,
Tank is crushed,
Yes.
destroyed, spliced and out to the sewer.
yes,
Yes, and that's how that operates?
yes.
But the wash machine had its own discharge that went in a
Correct.
different direction to a dry well?
Two opposite ends of the house.
I got
yes.
you. All right.
And they didn't apparently know that was the case, what that was.
Okay, very good. Joe?
I mean, short of pumping it inside the house to get it into the gravity side above ceilings and stuff, that just,
Yeah, because it's inside a wall right now that goes down under the floor, which is at the other end of the house through a kitchen. There's a finished kitchen downstairs, and it's very intrusive.
so it seems like you considered other reasonable alternatives,
Yeah,
and
we
this is,
walked-
this
we
is the one
walked
you're
it.
suggesting.
I met the
I
owner.
have no other, I understand. I'm all set.
I have no questions.
I also now have no further questions. Okay, motion?
So that's a -3 with conditions, pre-construction with erosion controls. And then post-construction approval, removing, making sure that everything is stabilized.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second, discussion? None, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, that's unanimous. Thank you, guys.
Thanks
you very
I
much.
appreciate it, thank you.
Okay, looks like enforcement order violation time. I have 46 Holly Ridge Road, continued from 1/12/22.
Alrighty. All right, let me pull this up here. Alrighty. Okay, so the commission will recall issuing a violation letter for clearing in the backyard, partially within the buffer zone that we thought at the time, based on staff's observation of hydric soils and, one wetland shrub. We asked them to engage services of wetland consultant and file, because this is a sloped area leading to the wetland. There is a drainage channel that was cut through the back of the yard that communicates directly behind the abutting property and into the wetland. So the commission was concerned about drainage patterns. They engaged DeRosa Environmental. They went out. They did 3 plots along that ditch that feeds into the wetland, and basically found that plots 3 and 2 did not bear out a wetland plant community. The dominance of the plants in those 2 plots were upland, and they were mature upland plants. They were errant. There was an errant high bush blueberry and a winterberry, but not enough to make it a wetland. So as they got closer down to where the actual wetland is flatter and fans out, plot number 1 had both hydric and the vegetation that supported placing the wetland edge there. So the black dot that you see on the map here is the limit of the 100-foot buffer zone from the actual wetland, from Plot 1. Taylor and I visited the property with the applicants and representatives from DeRosa, and we walked all of that area, looked at all the plants, and we do agree with their findings that the wetland is much farther downslope, and the subject property is out of jurisdiction, and it's well out of jurisdiction, so it's you know, a couple 100 feet to 150 feet or so. So I think we don't have jurisdiction, and this was an exercise worth doing to find out.
That's what I was going to say, that it's important to point out to the homeowner who's here tonight that it's not a perfect science, it is a science, but it's never perfect. That there's several indicators that make something a wetland or not, and a lot of those things have to align in a very specific and precise way. And a lot of times we can get visual indications that it probably is a wetland, and when you go out and actually apply all the science, it isn't. And so on behalf of all of us, you know, we were wrong, and we probably offer our apologies, but there was enough there to make us, you know, suspicious. So I apologize, but thank you.
Yeah, I'm certainly in favor of lifting the enforcement order. My only misgiving on this whole thing is that we issued an enforcement order that never should have been valid. Now, I know mistakes are made, but we've got residents here that have spent some money that they wouldn't have had to spend. So I don't know. I mean, I know mistakes are made.
Yeah.
I know it's an inexact science.
Right.
I'm concerned that this did happen, and to be honest with you, I haven't heard of it happening very much at all.
Right, well, plots 2 and 3 did have hydric soils. They had hydric soils, they just didn't have enough plant community to support it.
That's what I'm
And
trying
so
to get.
we weren't, you know, were we gonna start doing the whole 9 yards of a plot and
Without getting into specifics,
data sheets? We don't
you
do
need
that.
to have,
That's not
you need to have
usually-
soils, you need to have the hydrology, the water, and you need to have the plant community, both in the overstory and the shrub layer. All those things have to all exist in order to be a wetland. So the fact that there were indications that it probably was, when you get right down and analyze it, it isn't. And this area out here is actually notorious for those types of wetlands on hillsides.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know, we've seen them just a little further up the hill. So that's why I offer that apology.
It's and I do too. I offer an apology on behalf of the town. It's a difficult and a tricky lot. I guess that's what I have to attribute it to. But thank you for your patience with us. I have no other questions.
From what I hear, it sounds like everybody thought there was a wetland close by, and there wasn't, and you guys had to pay money out of pocket to prove that was the case, and I'm so sorry to hear that. So please have my apologies as well, and I think I've been here for 20 years. I don't remember ever, in my memory, of being in this situation. Sorry about that.
I mean, I guess, you know, if staff should have gone the extra mile to do a plot or two, but in my experience, that's not usually the function of staff. It's identifying enough indicators to say, you know, we think it's here.
Yeah, and to be fair.
Do you know what I mean?
And to be fair to you.
Yeah.
You know, if there was a major clearing of trees, which I think there was,
Yeah.
you know, some applicants will proactively go and have a wetland line identified. So many applicants do spend the money anyway, just to determine and define what they can do. And your job isn't to delineate every wetland line in town either. So, you know, I mean, I can
I know there's a
understand what
balance.
happened. This is just a tricky site, and
Right.
I wish it could have worked out better. But I think you're off the hook in terms of conservation.
Well, at least as far as working out, it did work out great in the end. I mean, they don't
Yeah.
have any issues with any wetlands, and they,
Yeah.
doesn't look like they ever will in their lifetime.
And they're gonna get their
Most people in
project.
town can't say that,
Yeah.
for sure.
We skipped over you, did you have any comments, or?
So I'm just thinking that maybe going forward, maybe we can just examine our protocols when we make site inspections to maybe include more than one function
Sure.
to determine wetland viability.
Yep.
Maybe this will be something for us to take forward and add, so that when we have staff in the field investigating what could be a violation, maybe there's a second protocol we could implement that backs up the first.
Yep.
Just for confidence builder, so we don't
Sure.
have, make mistakes,
Right.
because we shouldn't.
Yep.
Yeah, but at the same time, it is, and I don't want to belabor it anymore, but it is something we don't like to see happen and don't want to happen again.
No, yeah.
When she goes out there and she says, oh, it's got all that stuff that indicates it's a wetland,
Yeah.
you know, it's not like the town says, oh, town will pay out of pocket to go ahead and do that. So, so now it's stuck on the homeowner, and it just seems like a,
I know, but that's why I'm
So-
suggesting, there's nothing wrong with having a second way to proof a finding.
like having a second set of eyes go up there.
Either a second set of eyes, or, I mean, I don't think that a second set of eyes is necessary. I think that there's more than one way to determine viability of a wetland resource area.
Yeah.
And so we just want to, we'll use that as a lesson for us going forward. I think that's what I take from it.
Yep.
My takeaway is, if we can do a better job, we should. And, sorry, I hope you accept our apologies.
So we've issued and ratified the enforcement order, it's on the record, so we need to
Vote to lift it.
vote to. Well, lift it and remove it, I'd say
Remove-
rescind it,
yeah,
I'd say rescind it,
Rescind it.
if there is such a thing.
Either rescind or expunge, whatever the correct.
It's all the same.
Yeah.
They're all the
I
same.
move that we
Able counsel
rescind
says
the enforcement order and
Yep.
find the property in compliance.
Second.
Motion and a second, any further discussion? There is none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. I thought we just did this. I have 64 Nutmeg Down again. and-
Now they're
Right.
in compliance with the enforcement because they filed. Is that what it's on for?
Right.
So-
It's,
So we're vacating their
well, it's a cease and desist. I mean, you know, do you want to keep it in place until we issue the order of conditions, which is next
Okay.
meeting?
All right, if you want to do that, yeah, no objection.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, all those in favor?
Come on.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous as well. Okay. 40 Flagship, this is just an update, right?
There's nothing to update.
Nothing to update, okay, so motion.
There's nothing new.
Motion to continue, 40 Flagship.
Continue to add.
Yep.
I move to continue.
Second.
Motion and second to continue, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, and that's unanimous. All right, I have emergency certification heating oil spill. Is that what you're here for?
Yes.
Okay, good, all right, we won't make you wait any longer. Emergency certification heating oil spill, this is an update from February 9th regarding the spill on Foster Street.
Yep. Okay. So this is Fred Hilton of Hilton Oil.
How are you, still? Sorry to make you wait so long.
That's okay.
So, just as an update, since the last meeting, the town engaged Mike Sabulis of GEI as our third-party peer review to guide us through the process as impacted landowners. The town council provided formal communication with to Hilton Oil and their LSP requesting certain information as guided by our LSP. Unfortunately, the oil has traveled to the trails at the Foster Farm open space, so we had to close those. Today, we visited the site with Mr. Hilton, town engineer John Borghese and his staff, Mike Sabulis, and Conservation, to discuss the current conditions and the need for additional measures to intercept the travel of the sheen that still continues, and a path forward to contain and control the situation. So GEI, and I have it in your packet, GEI has provided some talking points and sort of a format for how we can move forward in this discussion. And, you know, first and foremost, needing to get a handle on how Clean Harbors is going to contain and control the ongoing sheen. Secondly, evaluating the nature and extent of the release in the wetland. And then thirdly, mitigating the nuisance odor in the neighborhood. And we have Alan Walker with Clean Harbors on the line with us, and Mike Sabulis with GEI, our third party, with us as well.
Okay, so your first goal in this report tonight is to do what?
Talk about, you know, containing and controlling the ongoing sheen and release.
Okay, just so that we don't stay here till breakfast.
Right.
Let's limit how long we're going to talk about this.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So first witness, who do you want first to talk? LSP?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, Mr. LSP,
Mr. Walker.
Which one?
how you doing,
I
buddy?
know.
Can you give us a concise but accurate update on what's happening and what will happen? Please.
Okay, you know, it's been a very challenging situation to address that and control the release there due to the changing site conditions from, you know, the blizzard and snow, ice, creating safety hazards for the workers to get out as far as everybody would like to get. And with the melting of the ice, additional release of the fuel oil occurs. And we recently established the access agreement with the homeowner because that, I believe, is really a fairly key component at this point, where there's a sheen that continues to flow from that area, probably with the fuel oil caught up in snow and ice packs. And as things melt, it releases more. And so we want to get in there and assess that situation and try to find if there is, you know, a bigger source of it that's caught up that we can remediate and address, or at least try to control it better than it currently is. And I had to put in some time with working with the insurance company to get them on board for that access agreement, but that did occur. And now we're in the position to follow up with them and get on their property there.
Whose property is it you have to get onto?
It's the upgrading property owner, just upstream of the road.
Yeah.
Okay.
242 Foster.
And what about the water upstream of the culvert, which is the direction of where the oil went before it went through the culvert?
That's the area that we want to get in at, and that's within that upgrading property owner, or upstream.
That's actually town property.
Upgrading is not actually.
Of the culvert?
Right, 242 actually juts out, and it actually, the
Well, 224 is the closest property to that culvert.
242, yeah.
224.
224?
224.
224.
The Goldstein property.
And just for clarification, whose insurance carrier did you say you needed, when you said you needed to get them on board? Whose? Hilton Oils or the homeowners?
Hilton Oils.
What did you have to
Initially,
get?
they wanted to understand the situation better, and in talking with them and in talking with Fred, you know, we were able to get them to move and act on it.
Who's the insurer?
It's federated insurance.
Are they part of a bigger insurance?
No, they're probably one of the biggest you know, in our industry.
They cover, yeah,
Yeah.
their specialty lines
Yes,
insurer.
correct.
When I had trouble to wrap my arms around for the last meeting and still not comfortable with what I'm feeling as I embrace it now, is the timing of all this. It seems to me, from where we sit, we've got two missions here. We as owners of the land downstream want our land to be clean forever. If it's not clean now, we want it to be clean in the end. Second, which should be our primary mission, is as protectors of wetlands, we ought to be certain that anything that's flowed from this accident through the resource areas and has caused harm has been stopped, contained, cleaned up, and if any restoration or mitigation is required in the end, is addressed. And it seems to me that still, almost at the end of the emergency certification, it seems to me that we're still grasping with containment. And that after, it seems to me that should be within the first 48 hours.
I'm trying to hold back my frustration.
And it seems to me that's our concern, is that still we're awaiting your bureaucracy of insurance carriers or whatnot, but nonetheless, the willing participant here would be the town and us to say, and we said at the last meeting, get downstream as far as you need to go, put whatever containment, whether it's flotation booms or absorbent pillows, whatever it is, contain it. And contain it in such a way that we know that our cleanup is going to be limited to only things upstream from there. And I'm still not getting any comfort of hearing any of that today. And I'm kind of curious if, what it is we are doing to, one, contain, and two, even to begin to, and maybe it's premature, but even begin to understand what understanding the magnitude of the issue is and what the remedy to all of that ultimately is going to be. Heard none of it. Maybe it's premature, but I think after a month we should have some sort of a better understanding of it, and I don't. I think that's probably it in a nutshell. There's so much there, but I know that there was some downstream stuff that was done. I do understand complexities with snow and ice and the various climates we've seen, but I did also hear reports that there were some efforts and some attempts of containment further downstream that simply weren't maintained. They were overwhelmed and washed away, so nobody's monitoring it. And to what extent do we need to concern ourselves with that downstream monitoring it? And it seems like all of this I'm discussing is those it's important to wetlands protection. It should be driven by a hazardous release from DEP, and I'm not seeing any iota whatsoever of the concerns that we have coming out of them, and it should be them. And, on behalf of DEP, it's the cleanup company's obligation to, even if DEP's surrendered the approach, they're putting full faith and effort into that firm. And after a month, I'm not seeing it. And I think the emergency certification has either expired today or just about to expire? Just about to expire.
Yeah, just about to expire.
So the
26.
bigger question is, with that being expired, there needs to be an NOI filed. And I don't hear any understanding whatsoever of what that NOI might look like.
Right.
Emergency certifications aren't extendable.
Right. We amended the emergency cert last meeting to require an NOI by tomorrow, but I don't know where they're at with that.
I'm not hearing anything coming back to us that gives me any indication that they even understand that.
Ask the question while you have the floor. Ask Alan the question. Where is the...
So Alan works for Clean Harbors, the
Yes.
company on cleanup. DEP has surrendered control of the site to Clean Harbors and you on their behalf, correct? So you're working for the...
Did you say yes to that?
Did you? Has DEP surrendered control to the LSP into Clean Harbors?
I don't know if that's the appropriate term to use.
Okay. correct me where I stray on that statement, that they're not on site overseeing anything. They've relied on you folks following procedure and reporting to them anything that would stray from procedure, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And you guys were, as a cleanup company, not you individually, but you as a company, were hired by Hilton Oil or their insurance company to carry this out. So the question really is the responsible party, through channels,
Is me.
is you.
Correct.
Now again, God love you, you didn't do this. Somebody who works for you did. But the question we ask is, do you have any idea when a notice of intent, NOI, is going to be filed?
I do not.
The better question is, do you have any control over your insurance company at this point?
I don't think it's an insurance issue right now.
What do you think the issue
I
is?
think, well, I mean, they put the booms, there's plenty of booms out. It's just, not catching the whole sheen going down.
I have to express that I know there is that concern about, it seems like there's inaction, but I'm not putting people out in unsafe footing in freezing conditions with ice to have that risk to a person. It's not acceptable. And it's not acceptable for the environment, and I understand that.
Alan, we're talking
you
about
cannot throw-
Mosquito Brook, we're not talking about the Antarctic here. We're talking about Mosquito Brook, the water's about 4 feet deep. What are you talking about? What
I'm talking
exactly
about
are you
that.
talking about?
I was there when it was flowing.
The ice is gone, the ice hasn't been there for a week now. Exactly, what are you talking about?
When's the last time you were there, Alan?
Are you kidding me?
So, when's the last time you were there, Alan?
It was about a week and a half ago.
A week and a half ago. Why haven't you been out since?
Yeah, what's happened in that week and a half?
Because I have Pat out there daily.
Why haven't you been out? So why is Pat on the line with us?
No, he's not.
Then why aren't you out there? If you're the representative and this is your job, shouldn't you be out there more than every week and a half when you're relying on information that is so old and stale, it doesn't even exist anymore?
I think the situation is as Clean Harbors. They are the agency that was hired by either Hilton or the insurance company or both. And they need to have a staff in place to carry out the mission in the most safe way as possible. I mean, I've seen news photographs of, turbid and, stormy waters and, oil tankers, spewing oil, and Clean Harbors on site in Zodiac boats with 4-foot seas pulling up boobs. They must have a safety plan in place. I don't see anything out in this particular location that was so unsafe that we would compromise downstream impacts, and that's what I'm hearing. And to me, that's unreasonable.
Alan, who's your immediate supervisor? What's his or her name, please?
Ken McDermott.
Okay. Amy, I'd like you to reach out to Ken McDermott tomorrow, okay?
Yep.
And let him know about our concerns here.
Yep.
Tomorrow he's unavailable. He's
We'll get them eventually.
We'll find them.
Well, we can reach out tomorrow and we'll touch base sooner or later.
Yeah.
Mr. Walker, can I ask you a question? Is there anything, can you name, all the factors that exist right now that are preventing you from cleaning up this spill?
Well, we haven't been able to get upstream, which is something that we've been wanting to do
And why is that?
because of the access agreement.
Access agreement.
With the above.
You're being prohibited by the homeowner.
Yes.
Yes.
Well,
How far upstream do you want to get? How far upstream do you try to get?
I think I talked about the fact that we needed to get the insurance company.
So what's stopping you is Mr. Green didn't appear. You haven't been paid yet. That's the problem, really, right? That's really the issue here. Crickets, huh? Won't answer?
All right, well,
I see what the problem is here.
We need mechanisms.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
I see
Can
what
I
the problem is.
offer some additional information to you?
I wish you would.
sure.
We've conducted some surface water sampling, which is provided to you. And it has indicated that, you know, there is no impacts as far down as that Lost Pond Road location. Everything there has shown to be clean. Pretty much everything in between that and where the release occurred is sheens, and sheens are extremely difficult to control. There's no more floating product that we are finding at this point. We have the booms out there to help collect, and pads down in between that, and it's getting checked by Pat daily. He's replacing things as needed. We're doing, I believe, the best that we can at this point. And we've excavated along the roadside to take out the impacts along the spill flow down to the roadway in the water. And, you know, at this point, we really need to get and look upstream to address that ongoing sheen that's being generated on the private property owner's property. And it's, like I said before, it's likely caught up in the snow and the ice.
So, just for the record, there hasn't been any snow or ice out there for a while now. Today is February 23rd. The spill occurred on January 24th. There hasn't been any snow or ice out there for at least 7 or 8 days. In fact, we had several days of 70-degree weather. I'm just not tracking what you're putting down here, sir. Not at all, not even a little bit. I have
That's
your time
contrary to what I've been informed, that there's still some ice packs.
Why aren't you going out there and looking at it with your own eyes? What's stopping you?
Because I have faith in the team.
You're the
that's
licensed
working on it.
site professional. You're responsible. You're supposed to be performing to a higher level. You're the guy that's supposed to be the man in charge of the site, the LSP. I just don't see it. I'm lost here. I'm not seeing it. And I'm not, frankly, I'm done listening.
So let's get back to emergency certification that's going to expire.
That's
Clock
what we
is
have to
ticking.
do now.
What we have is a need, an absolute necessity for continuing ongoing effort for cleanup that needs some sort of permitting
I
mechanism.
think we need to get somebody competent in charge.
Well, it needs
That's
to
what
be,
I think,
but what we have before us tonight is an LSP, and we have the owner.
allegedly.
And the notice of intent really is a complicated by design document that says these are the things we're going to do that
Yeah,
work
but
within resource
We
areas.
don't have one. We don't have one.
But we need it, and in 2 days,
So how do we compel?
in 2 days, what I'm hearing is if they listen to us and they go out and start doing things,
What can we
they're
do?
in violation of the Wetlands Protection Act as well. I
what-
need a mechanism to
What
have this.
can we do right now, today, to
Enforcement.
compel them to file an NOI and to get on site and start picking up, digging up and excavating that oil out of there?
So the
What can
last
do
meeting,
to
we were
compel?
this close, maybe even went across the line and pulled back of issuing an enforcement order. They weren't in violation at that time.
So obviously, we need an enforcement.
They are
order.
now.
But
They
that-
are in violation now.
But the mechanism to get them to do it is what it always is. It's fines, right?
Yeah.
Fines to the responsible party, who has very little control over what's going here. But still, that's the way it plays out.
Does anybody object if we just ask Mr. Hilton some questions?
Sure,
If
sure.
if you can answer them.
Sure.
And I understand you're relying upon your insurance company, and your insurance company is relying upon,
Well, the
Mr.
process
Wilson.
is that I have to hire somebody immediately, you know, at the time of the incident.
Right.
You know, so that's what we do.
Right.
You know, there's only pretty much one company left that you have to, you know, or, you know, that I know of.
So that's Clean Harbors. Are you in contact with them at all? Do you have contact with them daily or every other day or? anything?
Email through the office.
They're emailing?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's pretty much the only contact with it. You know, I speak with Alan on the phone, you
I
know,
mean,
and,
The problem we're having is we're seeing inaction.
sure.
And it's very frustrating from our point right
Mhm.
now, because that oil, if we let it flow long enough, it'll all flow down to the Ipswich River, and it won't be our problem anymore.
Right, I understand that, you know, like that's why I visited the site today.
Yeah.
You know, to see, and, I mean, I don't think there's any standing product anywhere, you know, like stuck. I think there's 2 blocks of ice on the upstream side of the road there.
Yeah.
And that's where it seems to me, just by observation, anything that, over the past couple of weeks, we've had freeze and thaw cycles. That oil originally, at the first night there was the whole thing was a sheet of ice, and that was on top of it. If you look at the report, they took out, so the amount of oil that went down there was 700 or 700 or 800 gallons. Their report shows that they got approximately 500 gallons from the vac truck. The driver told me that's all he had on the truck. He did a delivery up on Hay Meadow for 125 gallons. So if you do the math on that, it's 200, maybe plus or minus something, is what's missing. And when we looked at the site, Amy was out there this morning, there is 2 blocks, pieces of ice on the upstream side. And that's where the sheen is. Like, if you look on 242 Foster Street, if you actually look at the water and how it flows down, I think you're familiar with that, that area right there. Yep. The sheen doesn't go towards 242. It's working down, but it's right where the 2 blocks of ice are. The real way to clean that would be to get the blocks of ice out.
It needs to be excavated out, right there.
Yeah, but they don't have any way to do that because of the way, I don't think you could get it.
Because you can't, and as things melt,
Yeah.
the risk is a continued.
So, right, so they have booms going across.
And are those still intact?
So this morning, we asked them to put
Put
a
another
boom
one.
and absorbent pads and wattles on the upstream side.
And
To
with
try
given
to catch-
temperatures where we have an ice pack that's saturated, or at least has an oil on it, in itself, maybe contained, because it's frozen
Well,
on
that's
ice.
pretty much what it
What
looks
you
like.
want to do is make sure that it stays contained.
Right.
So as it continues to melt, like the warmer days and the rains that we've had,
Yep.
every time that happens, more and more of this product gets released. And my concern is I don't hear that we've had, over that whole period of time, downstream containment.
Oh, no, they do have it.
But is it functioning? I thought in
There's
some
three-
instances
there's
it's been overwhelmed.
There's 2
No.
sets of booms right on the other
So-
side of the road that are intact. And Pat, who works for Clean Harbors, what Alan said, he was there when I arrived there, and he was putting out more stuff out there. I was out on Lost Ponds Friday.
Yeah.
And I took videos of that. There is absolutely nothing. Brand new booms out there that they've been changing, but the fuel is red. So it's pretty easy to see if you have a containment boom that's collecting
Right.
any,
Right.
heavy product. The only thing that was visible out there this morning was a sheen, and it's coming off the frozen ice that's melting.
The upstream side.
Yeah, on the upstream
And the
side,
sheen is,
and it's
and it
being-
only gets as far as that first boom, it doesn't get
It
past.
goes past, and it's going past the second one, but they have multiple layers. I mean,
Yeah, it's
in
not-
their defense, they do have
And,
a whole bunch of booms laid out, like Progressive.
and that was in response to our suggestions
At the last meeting.
when we secured Mike Sabulis as our third party, we went out for a site visit. Yeah, that was,
So I guess,
right.
And
so
why-
we're narrowing
why
down my
can't-
period of
why can't-
concern. I've been concerned right up to this moment. Now I'm only concerned from the beginning
Well-
up to maybe a week ago. So we got 3 weeks of, we don't know what happened.
Why can't
Right,
the
but-
2 oil-laden ice blocks be removed?
I think they're too far out into
Can't be
the,
reached by an excavator.
they can't reach it with an excavator.
They can't reach them, and there's nothing for them, no way a machine can get out on top of it. There's
No,
too much resource area.
And
too
I'm
much
not gonna
water.
dictate means and methods, but if you've got
Right.
containment booms and it's not getting passed, couldn't you get out there with a tanker truck with hot water and a vac door downstream,
I don't know if they even have
melt
that.
it and suck the oil off?
I mean,
You know.
the way I look at it, I mean, the only
I'm
problem
not
is.
dictating means and
Right.
methods. It seems like it's
Right.
the better approach.
Well, I don't know how
is
they,
not wait
how
for it
they
to
would
melt.
do it.
Yeah.
So we,
To
so
track
I-
in?
I
you guys,
went down there as well, and Mr. Hilton's right. It's beyond the reach of any machine. There's nothing that's gonna
at
reach it.
this point, yes.
It has to be encouraged to come this way. But Even if you got the ice blocks out, which would be helpful, because that's the side where the oil spilled. It spilled upstream, and it's working its way
Yeah,
through the
yeah.
culvert. There's got to, at some point, at low water, there's got to be some excavation effort there, because that oil's going to stay in the muck.
So,
It's never going to come out.
So
I
we
have a
have-
picture of not to interrupt you.
No, it's okay.
But I have a picture of the night,
Yeah.
that, right at it happened.
Yeah.
And the oil, I mean, it's clearly visible because it was all ice.
And it's red.
And it's red, but
Yeah.
it never really went.
It stayed- it
It was
stayed in
stayed in the center,
I saw that.
almost to the center.
I saw that
You
photo.
know, so it's like, the water is pulling it this way anyway.
Yeah.
So I mean, it all has to be tested, I understand that, but I don't see how it can't go towards 242 Foster, because that's like upslope.
Yeah, no, that water's
know.
flowing hard.
And the water's,
it's-
But it's still, what I'm hearing is
Right.
that's still their property.
oh, absolutely,
From there
that's what they
going
said,
down,
yeah,
so it's
well,
still their property.
it's all, I guess, part of it, right, so
Yeah.
it's on their property,
So
right,
what's-
but on the
So-
water, right.
What's making it a little urgent?
can I,
Yep.
let's not forget, Mike Sabulis is
Yeah,
on the line
right.
with us.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we should allow him to
Yeah,
guide
let's-
us. And if he's got something to say, I think, because we can keep going like this
Sure.
all night.
Yeah, we hired Mike for a
No,
reason.
we're not going to, but yeah, bring Mike on.
So Mike Sabulis, could you just kind of hop on and refocus
Yeah,
us,
sure.
I guess, a little bit?
Sure, and I think understanding where we've come from and where we're at is a very complicated story, obviously. And if I could redirect everyone, I think the important place to go is how do we get back to control and containment? I know Clean Harbors is working towards it. I think we need to broaden that a bit. I know they've been focused heavily on 242, the source release area, and getting downstream. But the places I think we need to look are into the wetland complex itself. I'm not sure if the proponent has seen my field observation report from 217, but there was sheen and free oil throughout the wetland complex on some of the ice sheets that were available, blebs and other sorts of things, as well as some continuous oil. So I think that's one of the things I'd like to push forward, and I understand that a notice of intent is required, but that control and containment to the best of the ability given the challenging conditions, I think trying to get that figured out is an important thing along with the time, and I'm sure Alan's can figure that out for us. And then the next immediate step, to Joe's point earlier, is the nature and extent of contamination, which I know is upcoming, because I understand Clean Harbors is going to engage a ecological risk assessor, which would work hand in hand with the LSP to kind of figure out the extent of oil contamination in the wetland. And I think from my perspective, I'd like to hear what the timing and schedule for those events might look like for everybody. Does that make sense? And I think those are my two top tier items. And shortly coming up behind that, and it's a very difficult one, is obviously there continues to be an odor in the surrounding neighborhood. Obviously, that is probably a very challenging thing, with the dispersion and where things come to be. But that's something I think that we should also be addressed, because I suspect as warmer temperatures slowly prevail, barring things dissipating naturally, which is uncertain at this point, that's going to be a raising concern, at least for the residents in the area. So let me stop there. I think those are the 3 points I'd like to try to tackle. So really looking forward, because I'm not sure that what got us to this point is helpful, if that makes sense.
What got us to this point is there's no NOI filed, and several of us feel there's a substantial lack of action taking place. That's what got us here. I appreciate your comments. I appreciate your plan. I think we now, as a commission, have to take some action right now.
One thing I think you did is, did you want to hear something from Alan about what he plans on doing to take care of that?
Yeah, I think if we could push back to Mr. Walker, kind of understand what Clean Harbors is envisioning in the near term, like the next few days, next weeks, to try to wrap this up, understanding now that they have access to the 242 property wetland and kind of what their plan looks like going forward. I think that would be very informative.
Okay. Yes. So, the access agreement may take the rest of it'll take at least 3 days, according to the attorney, to go through that process probably. So there's that to contend with for any immediate work upstream, unless they give us permission to move into that sooner. And then, as you indicated, I plan on obtaining a ecological risk assessor to help with the evaluation of the impacts and actions he would recommend with regards to trying to preserve as much as we can of the unimpacted areas and also assess the actual impacts to the wetland. And then ongoing operations are going to need to occur to, keep changing out the pads and things like that, because there is that ongoing source, and that's why Pat's out there pretty much daily and checking on the booms, replacing pads, replacing booms as needed, and trying to stay on top of that as best you can. And he is there pretty much every day doing that activity. Big scale picture, I heard talk about excavation and things like that. I think we need to have a better understanding from the ecological risk assessor if that's truly needed or not, because you're getting into a wetland and you're taking out material that would likely never be able to be replicated properly again. It would be a man-made structure. It may not fit in nearly as well as what's naturally in place. And if we can preserve that type of environment, we want to do that. With regards to the sheen, the thing that needs to happen is to control it as best we can, and as we get upstream and identify where it is and remove it, that is what we would like to do. And that's what I have for now. I'm sure there's going to be additional input from the ecological risk assessor once we get him on board with that.
Do you have an ecological risk assessor procured?
Yes, Tony Rodolakis with Wood Environment.
Do you have that?
What's his,
She
I'm
says
sorry,
that
what's
to you.
Tony's name?
Wood Environmental.
And Alan, how is it being staffed now? You said Pat goes out there pretty much every day, or somebody?
Yes.
Is that
Yes.
right? Yeah, and how much time does he spend out there about, just so we get an idea of what's going on, man-wise?
It's variable. He's out there typically at least a few hours and sometimes most of the day.
Does he keep reports about what he's doing out there? Like changing pads
Yes.
or monitoring?
Yes.
Thank you.
I don't know if you reviewed the summary I sent in the other day, which describes, a lot of the work that he's done out there. If you haven't, I think it'd be helpful to review through that.
Yeah, we do. We have that in front of us.
We have that document.
Good, thanks.
All right, guys,
So, what I still
what's
see-
necessary right now?
Well, I've got a higher level of confidence that Clean Harbors is in fact more on top of this than I originally thought. They're probably very thorough with regards to the hazardous waste oil release. But I don't think from what I'm hearing, I don't think they understand what a notice of intent is or what it is that the Conservation Commission would typically need to allow these activities to occur moving forward. They're gonna do it from the 21E or the environmental release perspective only.
He's supposed to do the notice of intent.
No, I don't believe that Clean Harbors is equipped to do a notice of intent. I believe this is a separate consultant who's gonna come in and take their information.
They hire somebody.
And look at the overall picture, and we are going to be, we know where the wetlands are. We know what areas are gonna be explored, and these are the things we are likely to need to do, and be very specific, and we're gonna issue a permit. In the meantime, they're gonna continue to do these activities, and in 2 days are going to be in violation.
Okay, so let's.
So I think we need an enforcement order
let's
one,
Start with an enforcement.
and then require an NOI be submitted to.
Okay.
And I think that enforcement order begins immediately today.
Okay.
Excuse me, it'll begin at the conclusion of the emergency certification.
Why don't you, as you discuss it, make it a motion?
I'm garbage dumping, so this may not come out clearly.
I
But I think we're gonna start with an
you'll do
enforcement
fine.
order that begins when the emergency certification ends, whatever day that is, it's in the next couple of days. And then that enforcement order, we're going to impose fines on a daily basis, right off the bat. 2, we're going to require a continuing and ongoing cleanup effort by the LSP in support of their obligations under the material, but I'm gonna use the term, materials release plan. Whatever it is they need to do to certify to DEP that they're doing their job. To continue to allow that to go on, but within 30 days, a notice of intent be filed that tells them, tells us through a request for a permit, and we issue a permit to allow excavation, restoration, and the return of this area to the extent that is as clean as it can be.
And ongoing monitoring.
And ongoing monitoring. So I'd say enforcement orders, fines continuing, allow continued activities so they're in compliance with DEP on the release. And lastly, that an NOI be filed within 30 days. And I don't think it needs to say any more than that.
No longer than 30 days. Okay, that's a motion.
She's gonna
What
get
do
it
you mean
right.
by fines continuing?
Yeah, we don't have fines right now, they're working under an emergency order, right? No fines coming down?
Coming, so and the last time we told, 2 weeks ago,
We didn't do
we
anything
didn't do
about
fines, but we said we wanted an NOI.
Yes.
And we wanted that NOI in the.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow. I'm assuming, since I'm explaining what an NOI is, we're not gonna get one tomorrow.
Right.
So I'm assuming that when the emergency certification runs out and the enforcement order kicks in, fines begin that day. And they're gonna continue until such time as the NOI is filed.
Well, but did we place an order to compel them to give us a notice of intent or face fines? Or did we have a mechanism that would result in them facing fines?
But we've done it in the past, and correct me if I'm wrong, we've had fines accrue on a daily basis, and if they submit the NOI in compliance with the enforcement
But
order, we
Right, but there was an enforcement order in place that was the mechanism to charge those fines. So, I mean, if you want to give them a date of tomorrow to get us the notice of intent, or a week or something like that, I just don't know if you can.
well, I think it's unreasonable. I think what I'm saying is our enforcement order will begin the day this emergency cert expires.
Yeah, tomorrow.
So let's say tomorrow. Day 1, fines begin. We will continue to add them. We're gonna give them 30 days to file an NOI. If they file that NOI in 30 days, they're in compliance, those fines go away. If they don't file that NOI, those fines hold.
What are those fines for? Fining them for, what didn't they do? What did they do?
Fail to file an NOI.
They were never ordered.
No, what they're gonna be doing is they're gonna be continuing to do work out in the resource area under an enforcement order.
I think Sean's right, though. We define, we're premature on the fines. What we have to do is we have to give them a drop dead date to file the NOI. And then if it's not received on or before that date, then the fines start. That's.
All right, so it's 30
I'd like to do it the other way, but I just don't.
No, your way is good, it's just we can't do it. So, what's for the second meeting in March, what's the filing date for an NOI?
Okay, give me 1 second. Hold on.
I'm being generous by going to the second meeting in March.
That won't be 30 days. That'll be 7 days prior to that.
Well, they have to
23 days.
They have to meet a filing deadline.
That's what I'm saying, so that's not gonna be 30 days then. The second meeting is 30 days from now.
This is what we did last time.
But that's not, I understand that. I'm not
So-
interested in 30 days.
The second meeting in March is the 23rd.
And when's the
The
drop?
deadline is March 10th.
That's the date, so an NOI has to be received on or before March 10th.
And Amy, I'm correct, there is no current order out there, right? There is no current enforcement order.
No, it's just an emergency certification.
So this is part of the enforcement order, that the NOI be received by you on or before that date. That's the date that would be the date that fines would start to accrue if the NOI is not received. That would be part of the enforcement order that Joe has been offering.
And those fines would be issued to Hilton Oil, Clean Harbors?
They have to be.
I mean, it's gonna
end up in the insurance company.
Yeah, it has to start with the,
Let them figure it out, but
Yep.
it's responsible.
Okay. All right.
And what else
We
we want?
understand you're here, do the right thing.
We know you
I'm
cooperate.
trying.
You're cooperating.
I'm trying.
Do you need anything else in there? And keep doing the work that's, do we want to have them
Yeah, we have
mandatory that they?
Ongoing cleanup per MCP, DEP's,
Yeah, that's a citation, I'm not comfortable with it.
or,
To continue with the ongoing response plan to.
As per the previous emergency certification.
Yeah.
Make believe the emergency cert is still in effect, per the enforcement law.
Do we want them reporting to Mike on a certain basis as part of this order?
Well, I think that somebody should be reporting to both Amy and Mike on a daily basis,
Okay. then
frankly.
Put it in the
Amy,
order.
Mike, and John Borghese.
Because, I mean, if we let this thing drag on long enough, all the oil's gonna eventually end up in the ocean and it won't be an issue anymore.
So let's put that in the order as well. If they're
Yep.
Obligated to do that, communicate. And is email okay with you or
Yep.
telephone? Yeah.
Because frankly, one of the concerns, and I know everybody's cognizant of this, but one of the concerns is we're not that far away from critter season, breeding season,
No, I know.
waterfowl, invertebrates, critters, everything. Everything's gonna start coming awake shortly, and it's not gonna be awake for long, if it wakes up at all. Because that's what that whole picture of Mosquito Brook going through the Foster Farm property, that's a huge wildlife resource.
So we should add that all data and reports or results of any kind of testing be provided to us within 72 hours?
Excellent.
No, just immediately, provide it immediately. As soon as they get the results, we wanna know right away,
All right. Immediately.
immediately. And they have to identify, in the NOI, that they're gonna have to identify and monitor, I'm sure the wetland scientist, whoever the scientist is that they hire to do the NOI.
So I think, Mike Sabulis, so you have recommendations in here that speak to scheduling for designing and implementing remedies in the wetland. That's something that would be in the notice of intent. Does that sound reasonable, and should we place those parameters in this enforcement order so that we have a flavor of what we want in the NOI?
I think that would be helpful to ask for what the schedule, almost in a three-week or construction scenario, look like if you were looking at what the plans are coming as they move ahead, because obviously things change. But having that look ahead of, this week we're going to be trying to mitigate X, Y, Z. We're changing out booms. Our wetland scientist is deployed on this day. Not to get too granular about it, but I think things that kind of lay out a schedule that would help the committee and the town understand how response actions are proceeding would be very helpful.
Okay, all right.
So Mike,
One other suggestion as we were thinking about meltwater and ice blocks and things melting for consideration for the team here is I know one line of turbidity curtain style boom has been put out. It looks great with the absorbent materials behind it. If possible, maybe worth considering stringing additional lines of that, either upstream or downstream of it, and then putting the more absorbent materials around that, and actually seeing if you can take advantage of the stream conditions and using it almost like a baffle tank system, where it's going to overtop, and then the next line will slug collect. I know there's absorbent materials out there, but that turbidity curtain might give you a little bit of a slowing factor and a little bit of time for things to collect. Just a suggestion for consideration if you're up for it.
yeah, no, appreciate that.
And I'm reading the notice the town attorney provided, Mr. Hilton, and it tells the things that we want to do, but I'm hearing that there's been some protracted license to access property discussions going on with a private landowner, but I'm hearing no such discussions with regards to access to our land. So I really encourage, it sounds to me that they're going to be on our land, and we want them to be on our land
Yes.
doing work. They should be pursuing the same sort of agreement with the town, and I don't believe this commission can grant that. It's got to be the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah.
Or somebody,
Or
on
somebody,
behalf of the Board of
the town
Selectmen.
manager or whatever.
But that should, those discussions should already be ongoing.
Yep.
If we haven't heard anything to that extent yet.
So pursue that.
And just to be perfectly clear on that point, response actions are not contingent on that agreement. They should continue as those discussions.
Yeah.
So I think those things will work parallel path, correct?
That's why I wasn't understanding why that was a reason for delay, because I didn't think they needed that landowner's permission to go in and do that on an emergency response. I didn't think so. I'm all set.
Right, so, your motion
Second.
and a second, you're clear on the motion or questions?
Yeah, let me just ask one more question. So,
Yes.
Mike, your recommendations for additional turbidity booms or curtains and absorbent pads, how many, or should that be something that we work out in the field with you, or? I
We
mean, I
should be
just-
specific,
Yeah.
as many as are necessary.
Just like going to the doctor
Agreed.
as needed.
Okay,
So the main points of the enforcement order, Amy, can you just
yes.
briefly read them back
Yeah,
to us?
so, okay. So this EO will begin the day that the emergency cert ends. A notice of intent must be filed by March 10th. And if not, every day after that, $100 a day will be assessed as fines. Ongoing cleanup activities, as per is required and as required, and, allowed under the emergency cert shall be ongoing. Let's
Yeah, we don't want the expiration of the cert to imply that they're not authorized to work.
That's right.
Okay,
Yep,
so we want the
that's right.
enforcement order
To allow for
to
those
say, yeah, we
cleanup,
want you to
just
keep
keep
working.
going,
Yeah,
keep going
don't
with-
stop
with
working.
that.
That's the intent.
Right, yep. Reporting of all test results or any kind of activities that they do to,
Every day.
well, yeah, but in
Ev-
terms
ev-
of its,
What?
I mean, weekly, of what happened that week,
I
any
think we
test
want
results
copies
they
of daily
have.
reports. We want copies of daily reports, I'm sure they keep them.
No, but I mean,
Okay.
what's
And
wrong-
I think any
That's fine.
analytical reports they receive, we want to receive them as well.
What's wrong with somebody,
That's fine.
the grown-up in charge, reporting to Amy every day?
Okay,
What's
That's
wrong
what you're
with that?
suggesting.
Yeah, daily
Okay.
reports.
all right, daily,
Yeah.
all right,
I mean, we're
we
saying
need
we have a sense of urgency here. This is
Yeah.
how we display
That's
that
right.
sense of urgency. We
Yeah.
don't say, okay, we're pissed off, but you can take a couple days to get those
no, I
reports in.
gotcha. We need a look-ahead schedule for anticipated activities for the next 2 or 3 weeks as they go. Additional turbidity curtains with absorbent pads, as many as deemed necessary to control, I guess, and pursue access agreement with the town for work on our property. And include in the notice of intent, what we'd be looking for, the design and implementation of remedies for impacts.
I mean, I
And a
can't,
time frame, monitoring, means and methods, all that.
I have a hard time believing that we would have to tell somebody what we're looking for here.
I will move
I don't know.
that.
Okay,
Yeah, that's a great summary.
okay.
Second.
Motion and a second. Anything further? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Hilton, thanks for working with us.
Thank you very
All
much.
right, thank you.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks, Alan.
Actually,
Well, you have.
I have
Go ahead.
one more request, if I could make it.
Yes,
very
yes.
brief. It's Alan. For ongoing testing, in addition to EPH, could you guys add BPH testing to that suite? Just because there's a lot of fresh oil out there, just gonna want to see if we make sure we capture the volatile petroleum hydrocarbon range as well. For the commission, to date, samples have been tested for the extractable petroleum hydrocarbon range. There's a different hydrocarbon range that has the volatiles, benzene, toluene, all that sort of fun stuff that's in there. So asking for a kind of broader suite of testing as testing progresses and moves forward. That doesn't need to be, I don't think, in the enforcement order, but just kind of LSP now.
Why
Yeah,
not?
no,
Why not?
That's
That'll
fine.
help understand the
Yeah.
Hey, one additional question.
Yep.
With regards to pursuing the access to the town, who do I work that through?
I would contact Suzanne Egan, our town council.
Okay.
So do you guys want to amend that motion to the
To
enforcement?
include,
Or
to include that?
I think
The
the
V-
specificity on what things they're testing and not testing, that falls under the emergency response, but I think let the record show that we're looking for VOCs.
Okay.
VOC or
Okay.
VHCs?
So you want,
VHCs.
Well, I'm
put it in, Amy, add it to the,
Mike Sabulis.
Mike.
Yeah, my suggestion is that it doesn't need to necessarily be a component of the enforcement order as much as the response actions progress as the testing analysis. I would suspect that the ecological risk assessor that they're engaging that'll be a helpful metric for them to have too as they're evaluating risk in the wetlands. So
that should be.
I would imagine that discussion will happen regardless. So just kind of throwing my 2 cents
the
in
NOI.
the ring right now.
That should go into the NOI. Everything that Mike just suggested
Yep.
should be part of the NOI,
Okay,
under scope of work.
Yep.
Thank you, Mike.
okay, great, thank you.
Problem, sir.
Thank you, Mike. All right,
Okay,
we voted.
and I guess
Huh?
we continue to the next meeting for updates.
You can continue to the next meeting for updates. The March 10th is the
Is there a deadline for
deadline.
NOI?
The next meeting is what, March 8th, something like that?
March, yeah, 8th or 9th.
I have a calendar here somewhere.
It's the 9th. It's the 9th.
It's the 9th, okay.
Yeah.
All right, very good, thanks. So you'll know on the 9th if something's coming to you on the 10th, or if it's not.
Hopefully.
Well, I'm hoping with the
Sometimes
daily,
they
I'm
show
hoping
up
the daily
at my door.
communication will take
Yes.
place, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right,
All set?
I guess, I guess we're as set as we can be.
I know.
Yeah. All right, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Thanks
Sorry you
for
had,
coming.
I'm
Thank
sorry you had to
you.
sit through it all.
Okay.
Yeah, no worries. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Alan.
Take care. Have a good night, all.
You too.
All right, next I have 27 Charles Street, Lawrence Airport Commission. Upstream drainage.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, Madam Administrator, Mike Miller from the Lawrence Municipal Airport. I'm back.
No extra charge for the entertainment, by the way, Mr. Miller.
No, that's fine, thank you. Typically, you see me sitting here with Mr. Randall Christensen from Stan Tech. Unfortunately, Randy couldn't make it this evening, but sitting aside of me is Mr. David Rich, a professional engineer with Stan Tech, and he's, we're probably the client manager for Stan Tech for the airport, so you've seen his work. His plans have come before the commission over the past several years. With that, I'll leave it to Mr. Rich to speak on behalf of the airport.
Thanks, Mike. Good evening, everyone. And Randy sends his apologies for not being able to make it tonight. I'll do my best to pinch hit. So just to summarize this issue, 27 Charles Street, just south west of the airport property, has been experiencing some flooding. So last Friday, February 18th, a group of us performed a site walk. It just so happened that Thursday night into Friday, there was rain overnight, and it was actually rain Friday morning. So it was convenient to see stormwater flowing that Friday morning. So the group included folks from Stantec, folks from the airport, from 27 Charles Street, from their consulting engineering firm, and Amy performed a site walk last Friday. We met at the back parking lot of 27 Charles Street. You can see that in the lower left-hand corner of the graphic. And we made our way up to the airport on the site walk. And we focused on a few different areas. One, we focused on the relocated intermittent stream, which is on the top left side of the graphic there. And some of you may recall in 2016, 2017, when we constructed the runway safety area, we did relocate a section of the existing intermittent stream. And what we saw on Friday was that relocated portion of the stream was in really good shape. There's no evidence of overtopping. There's no evidence of it being breached, and it was very well armored. So the group looked at it and agreed that the relocated portion of the intermittent stream was in really good shape. The next area we focused on was towards the end of Grosvenor Ave there. You can see the airport perimeter fence almost has a perpendicular T, and you see a couple dimensions on the graphic. So what we saw, this is an area where the intermittent stream runs parallel to the airport perimeter fence for a section. That stream wasn't being overtopped that day, Friday morning, but we saw evidence that perhaps it was being overtopped in the past. We saw some matted down grass, some leaves up against the fence. So as a group, we discussed the desire to put in some temporary mitigation to fortify the southern edge of that stream for a certain length. And we talked about 80 feet on one side of that perpendicular T, if you can see that dimension. And then folks from 27 Charles Street's consulting engineering firm also suggested another 40-foot section on the other side of that section of fence. Now, I will say, so that's a total of 120 feet. And I'll talk about our requested proposed methods in a second here, but we don't feel that whole 120 feet is being breached. We think it's isolated spots perhaps, but out of an abundance of caution and to be conservative, we'd like to fortify 120 feet of the southern edge of that stream. Yeah, and it was a request of Hancock as well. So it was a group discussion in the field and agreed to that 120 feet. Makes sense. Now, our proposal, option A, is to use core logs, coconut fiber logs. We used those in the relocated stream. They performed excellent. They were installed in 2016 or 2017, and they're still there today, performing very well. And this is a material that really is built it's built for stream bank erosion issues. That's option A. Option B would be staked hay bales. So really, that's our introduction of the topic to you, and just looking for your thoughts on fortifying the southern section of that portion of that stream.
I believe there may be a representative from 27 Charles Street observing from the internet.
Yeah, Glenn Wood, attorney for 27 Charles, is on the call.
Okay, so, Amy, you or the commission or the council?
Well, I think it's important to understand that the flooding at Charles Street is probably multi-pronged. It may not just be this part of the stream that's jumping its banks. The property at the very end of Cosgraven. Okay, sorry. You'll see it's at the very end. It's the last house on the right. They have been experiencing severe flooding in their property and in the basement, and they have dug a ditch alongside the side of their house to channel the water away. And as you go further upstream at the end of Poor Street, the last house on the left is sort of doing the same thing, creating channels, so that channel on the end of Poor connects to the one that's behind the house at the end of Cosgravener's. So there's a lot of things going on here. And so this proposed core log fortification of the very flat part of the stream bank that's up against the chain link fence is sort of an immediate stopgap measure. And I think we're crossing our fingers that maybe that's a major part of it, but we don't really know yet. And I think, a long-term solution is, more investigation and a full-blown notice of intent, and maybe some coordination with DPW, with street drainage.
A notice of intent by who?
I don't know.
Who would be filing a notice of intent? And what would be the scope of work?
That's I don't know.
It sounds like it's got to be engineered before the.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. I mean, so I think, like I said.
Let's hear from the representative for the neighborhood. I'm interested in seeing what, Counselor, if you'd like to be heard.
Sure. Good evening, Glenwood, Rubin, and Rudman. Thank you very much, and we do appreciate Stantec being here this evening. Our client has had multiple major storm flooding events that have caused major insurance claims from their tenants. And so this is an extremely important issue. Unfortunately, it's taken our firm to write a very threatening letter to the airport manager to get their attention and to get the city's legal department to actually get Stantec engaged to start to fix this problem, which has been ongoing now for like a year. And in the major storm events, it's like Niagara Falls coming over the slope. It's very clear that the vast majority of the stormwater that's impacting our client's property is from the airport. And so we do appreciate the immediate, and I think this could be permitted or allowed as an emergency permit or whatever the commission feels comfortable with to allow Stantec to initiate this initial work that we surely appreciate. But as Amy's pointed out, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Stantec does need to be authorized by the airport to move ahead with a much fuller investigation to determine the necessary capacity to handle flows that are coming off this entire area of the airport, which it would appear that the vast majority are from the airport itself. This is overtopping in a very small storm event already. And so it just seems that the design that was previously permitted and approved by this commission seems to be very substandard and needs to be improved. So we do hope, and we look forward to continuing engaging with the airport and Stantec with our engineer, Hancock, who wasn't able to be here this evening, to look at that. And as Amy said, additionally, that there is some amount of additional runoff that's coming down from Matthews Lane or Way, I believe, and that subdivision that was recently built. There's a stormwater detention system. I've seen it. I've been at the site several times. Is a tiny little system, and clearly there's water that's coming from some of the further upgradient areas and heading down there that don't have anything to do with the airport, it would appear, but are issues that we're going to try to take up with the planning board and the DPW director. They may well come within the jurisdiction of the CONCOM as well, because there is BVW even further along that eastern edge of the airport itself. So we do appreciate the effort and the commission getting involved and surely Amy's efforts tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Counselor. Joe?
The original safety improvements on the runout area, on the runway, when were they done?
They were constructed in 2016 and 2017.
16, that's what I thought, they were that far back.
Yeah.
So, my understanding might differ from what I just heard. My understanding was, we got a report of concern, Conservation Department got a report directly of concern of flooding on Charles Street, and in the course of looking into, we never got any official notification in writing or anything threatening or anything. We got that notification and reached out to the airport and tried to, thinking that might be a situation.
Yeah,
we reached out to them, right?
it came through the DPW.
What?
It came first through the DPW.
Okay, so we don't know what happened before that.
Right,
All right.
right.
And again, we recognizing that the only thing that significantly has changed out in that area was your project, but I have to recognize it was a substantial number of years ago, and it hasn't really manifested itself into this issue until recently,
Right.
year or two.
Right.
So typically, if something is going to fail, it's going to, in this fashion, it's going to fail pretty quickly if this was the sole source. So I think it may be, as suggested, it may be an accumulation of things. So I don't think an NOI at this point for the stopgap measure, until we know what's actually out there, makes any
Right.
sense to anybody.
Right.
I think we allow this to go in, let some additional investigation go on.
Yes.
I don't know how we measure storm events versus impacts, other than we had a major rain event and Charles Street continues to get an issue, yet we go up there and we find the core logs are in fact doing their job, and that's not the
Right.
issue. So, I think there's a lot more fact-finding to be done before
Absolutely.
direct finger-pointing
Oh,
occurs.
yeah, absolutely.
And, I
Yeah.
appreciate this offer, and I think it's probably fair game to do that under enforcement order.
Enforcement order, right.
To let that go forward, because it is working in the resource area, mind
Yeah.
you. That's all I have to say on that?
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I think, you know, the approach of putting a Band-Aid on it, you know, clogging up the dike with your finger, it makes a lot of sense. The core logs, I think are, you know, if that's what you've been successful with in the past, I would completely support that as a temporary measure. But listening to, you know, Amy's comments and the counselor's comments, it sounds like, you know, the problem may be bigger than just, you know, lining that intermittent stream with the core logs.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean,
So,
especially with the property owner that is even upstream of that having trouble.
having trouble
Yeah.
with that other
Yeah, I mean,
resource area that
right.
seems to jut out from there.
Right.
So, I mean, it almost sounds to me like temporary fix under an enforcement order, revisit the calculations of that, the design of that entire intermittent stream, and inspection of the facility. Maybe it has deteriorated over the years, and maybe there are some sections that are substandard and could be easily fixed. But I think a combination of, you know, starting with a short-term fix and following up with a long-term approach to understand what's going on there is, I think, the right way to go. Now, who know? You know, we talked about NOI. We don't know where that study is going to take us. So it's very preliminary right now. But I would support getting the temporary fix in there with a enforcement order, doing as much as repairing as much as you possibly can, and then following that up with a study and an inspection and a plan to fix it permanently. So that's.
I think they covered it.
I agree. I'm in favor of your proposed stopgap measure. I think that's the best first step right now. So,
Mr. Chairman, may I just say something, just to address some comments by Attorney Wood? He indicated that the airport was not responsive to his client. First time I was approached by his client was last summer. Second time I was approached by his client was in the fall after another event. I scheduled a site walk with his client and their engineer at that time, who was working for Andover Consultants. We walked the entire area as we walked last Friday. They made the determination that time that there was water coming from the exact location that we saw last Friday. They left the site at that point in time on November 30th, and I never heard back from either their engineer or their client. So to suggest that it took a letter from his office to get us to respond, I think is disingenuous. We did respond. We walked the site walk with them, and their engineer consultant was going to get back to us. He was going to do some calculations. They ultimately went with another engineering firm. That's okay. But to suggest that we weren't working with his client, I think is inaccurate, and I'd just like the record to reflect that we already had a site walk back in November. I was awaiting the response from them. And I actually ran into his client's husband, and he told me that they were working on some stuff. And that was about 2 weeks before we got the letter from this firm. So I just wanted, for the record, because I've worked with this board for over 20 years, I don't want you to think that we ignore people.
so the record will reflect. So what's before us?
So I recommend issuing an enforcement order allowing the proposed.
Allowing the proposed work. Okay.
I think we want to expand that a little bit further, that,
Okay.
you know, specify a range of rain events that occur, that we want somebody to come out and evaluate the impact and the performance of the stopgap, and to report that to us, and that they, at the very least, come back a first meeting in June to give us preliminary findings of the success of this stopgap measure, and then from there, we can decide what that next step needs to be.
That's good.
It's a good motion.
Yes.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any further comments or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. So you can,
Granted some leeway, I didn't define the range of rain events, but we need to.
Yeah, I was like, what does that look
all
like?
right, so,
It's usually, it's 2 inches within 24 hours, or any individual, whatever that standard is under stormwater,
that
Okay.
requires for erosion control inspections?
It's half inch in 24
Oh,
hours.
a half inch, yeah.
Half inch within 24 hours.
Yeah.
Correct. And then any individual, there's also a threshold on max, so you don't,
Oh, yeah,
on any, like a gully wash and thunderstorm.
Right,
We're not gonna
right,
get
right.
by June, but
right, right, okay.
we'll come up
All
with
right,
those
I'll
exact
respond,
numbers,
yeah.
if you can grant us that leeway.
All right, so you can get started on it under the enforcement order. Amy will, Amy will
Thank you,
complete it, get it to you. All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn, thank you, guys.
And we have one decision. Who took the over? Whoever took the over wins. Next time, we'll always take the over.
Sorry.
Did
Thank you.
Oh, he took the over, Jack took it.
The over was a less, I was overly optimistic.
So was I.
Okay.
Yeah. I had a rational exuberance, Joe. All right, let's get 328 Campbell Road out of the way, guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there anything unusual or remarkable in this order, Amy?
No, not really, it's a septic system.
This is a septic system.
Front yard, access is no issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ready for a motion.
One, good.
Bond, oh, what did I do? I think I did 1,500.
46. I move that we accept the order of conditions for DEP file number 242-1835, 328 Campbell Road as drafted.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. We stand adjourned.
That rapid motion.